Right. Well, I think we can, people can roll in while we're just setting the lay of the land here. Thank you all so much for coming. This is the part 2 of the Faculty Research Concept Competition. For those of you that were not in the morning session, this is intended to be a place for PIs to propose research projects, more research programs that they want to recruit other folks to. And so we had a session this morning where our 3 finalist teams were allowed to work in breakout groups with teams that, with folks that may want to work as part of their team. And then they've been working feverishly to put together the presentations that you're going to see in a few minutes. Before we start with the presentations, I just wanted to mention a couple of thank yous. First off, to the teams that put in videos. We had 6 teams submit videos, and you can still see those up on the IS Co-op website. The 3 that you're going to hear from today were the 3 teams that received the most votes from conference registrants to participate in this phase of the competition. One of those 3 teams will be selected as the winner of the competition, and the next thank you goes out to the VPR's office for providing the reward, the prizes for this competition. So the winning team will receive $10,000 in research funding, and the 2 running up teams will receive $5,000 in research funding. And then finally, our judges for today, I wanted to thank them, Rob Del Campo from Anderson School, Trefina Edie Peel from the School of Education, and I know I'm forgetting Laura Crossie from Arts and Sciences. So thank you guys for agreeing to provide your input on this. And so what we'll do now is for each of the teams, we'll just present, we'll show you their 2-minute video that they submitted in case you haven't seen that, so you can understand kind of the big picture of where they're headed. And then each team will present their plan for moving forward over the next immediate term, the next year or so, with their research projects. So without further ado, we'll start with Sleepless in America, Social Sensing with Nighttime Social Media Usage, submitted by Professor Shi Gong from the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies.
Hi everyone, this is Shi Gong from Geography and Environmental Studies. My research topic is Sleepless in America, Social Sensing with Nighttime Social Media Usage. So I guess you have seen this image before. It's about a nighttime light image. If we replace the light spot with the social media post, we get an image like this. And we can use this data to investigate a lot of human behavior patterns. Also, the nighttime light image has been used in a lot of applications, but they're not purely related to human behavior. It also has the influence of the infrastructure lights, the moonlight, and other light sources. However, for the social media nighttime data, we can have more information, like it's about pure human activities. It has more information like time, location, connections, even the text information, and has less noise than the daytime social media data. Here are a few goals for this research. So first, I want to investigate the sleep patterns of the population based on the temporal changes of the nighttime tweet quantities. And also, I want to map the sleep quality and the sleep issues across the United States. And I can also examine the possible reasons for the sleep disturbance, for example, anxiety or stress caused by the topics that's discussed or associated with other factors like the COVID pandemic status or the unemployment rate. Also, we can use the nighttime social media to do the event detection and tracking more accurately because there are less noise. And we can also monitor how cities and communities reopen and recover from the pandemic based on the nighttime usage patterns. Here are a lot of interdisciplinary challenges. So if you are interested in this topic, feel free to join the discussion. Thank you.
All right, and
so I suggest we start. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us for this webinar today.
Now I'd like to introduce Professor Shi Gong, and we'll work on getting his screen up to present his and his team's plan for moving forward.
Can you let me share my screen? Is disabled?
You should.
Oh, it works now. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hi everyone. This is Shi Gong from Geography and Environmental Studies. The project is Sleepiness in America, Social Sensing with Nighttime Social Media Usage. So a little bit background about this. Sleep issues has been affecting over 50 million Americans every year, and which can lead to serious health problems and increase the risk of injuries. And the COVID-19 pandemic actually make it worse because of the fear of people's health, uncertainty about the job and economy, and also the change of daily routines, for example, work from home or childcare at home. Anxiety and stress are related to the sleep disturbance. And according to literature, the most vulnerable population are women, younger people, chief earning members of the family, people with psychiatric illness, and healthcare workers. So we want to investigate what is the sleep disturbance in the United States, the patterns and all the behaviors. As in my video, you probably have seen this nighttime light image before, which is from remote sensing. And if we change the light spots in this image to social media post, it became social media nighttime social media image. We call it social sensing. The key concept here is each individual plays as a role of a sensor. Because social media platform has large user and post and leave a lot of digital footprints every day, which provides valuable data source to observe and analyze human behaviors and activities in a group pattern. So that's why I try to use the social media data to do the social sensing in order to know how people have sleep disturbance. Compared to the nighttime light image with the social media actually is purely about human activities. It has more information than just the nighttime light, because it has like the user profiles, it has the time of the post, it has the locations, the connections of, for example, social network, the text information, which includes like topics, sentiments, and in the literature, there has been a lot of research using the social sensing based on the social media data. For example, we can investigate the conversation information, we can investigate the social networks, even the movement information. However, not many studies have investigated nighttime patterns. If you look at the right figure, the tweeting behavior at night is totally different from the daytime, because there will be much less posts and much less users, but also it means less noise. So in this study, we try to use the nighttime social media usage to do the social sensing in order to know what happens with the sleep disturbance. Under the big umbrella of the social sensing, we have 4 research questions to answer. First one is, what are the spatial-temporal patterns of the sleep disturbance across the United States? The second one is, we'll explore the possible reasons for those sleep disturbance patterns. Is there any disparities in it? The third one is, can we monitor how cities and communities reopen and recover from the pandemic? using the nighttime social sensing. And the last one is can we better detect or track events in near real time based on the less noisy nighttime social media data? So I will try to explain each of these 4 research questions in details in the next few slides. The first one, spatial-temporal sleep patterns. So we try to investigate the sleep disturbance patterns based on the time and the quantities of the nighttime tweets in different study areas. For example, cities or states, or even just communities. And we can map the sleep disturbance patterns across the United States, like the map on the right. And spatial autocorrelation can be investigated, for example, whether there are clustered patterns in it and which are the most severely affected regions. The challenge in this goal is how to handle the social media big data. We can have some help from the research data service and GI science experts in this team. And the visualization of social media big data needs computer science and GI science team members. And also the spatial statistic part need a GI scientist. The second goal is to explore the reasons for the sleep disturbance. We can do that from 2 different ways. First one is analyzing the tweet contents, including the topics people tweet and the sentiment people tweet. For example, the topic including like whether they talk about work, family, or news at night, or whether the sentiment is positive or negative, whether they have emotions like anxiety or fear in it. So that can affect their sleep quality. And also, we can explore the association between the sleep disturbance with various factors. For example, the race, ethnicity, the age, the socioeconomic status, the unemployment rate, and even the case numbers in the specific area, and the vaccination rate, something like that. So we can find which factors can determine or cause that sleep disturbance. And based on the association, we can identify if there are disparities in underrepresented populations. The challenges in this research including the natural language processing and text mining, which require computer scientists in this team, and the psychological, social, and environmental factors for the sleep disturbance, which need help from the public health, psychology, and sociology experts. Also, we need to identify the suitable statistical analysis to investigate the association. So statisticians and GI scientists are all needed to be included in this team. The third goal is to monitor reopening and recovery from the pandemic. Because based on the McKinsey Global Institute, the recovery after COVID-19 could take 5 years or more. So we want to know whether the recovery is going on in the right direction. And we can use the sleep quality or sleep disturbance as an indicator to test whether the pandemic status is getting better or worse. So we can compare the time series of sleep disturbance pattern based on like tweeting time, quantity, content, sentiments, and compared to the time series of pandemic status. For example, the case number and the vaccination rate. In this case, we can know whether they're correlated, positive correlated, or negative correlated. We can also examine and compare the spatial difference of reopening. For example, we can compare the rural versus urban area between different communities, even between different blue states and red states, and so on. And the sleep disturbance that we get from the social sensing can be used as an indicator for the policy evaluation. For example, if certain policy is positive or negative affects the recovery, like the school reopening or stay-at-home order. And based on that, we can explore possible adjustments to help the recovery. So the challenge including the complexity of human behavior in different communities. So sociology and geography experts are needed in this research. time series analysis and the map and visualization need statisticians and GI scientists. Evaluation and adjustment of the policy regulations, we have a team member from the public administrations that can help with this part. The last goal is to event detection and tracking. So nighttime social media data actually has less noise than the daytime ones because only local major events tend to attract attention during the late night. For example, extreme weather, natural hazards, or civil unrest. And we can use the abnormal tweet quantities to detect and track these events at night with less noise. And we will also investigate into the tweet contents in near real time to understand what's going on. The challenge here is big data management because the Twitter stream is continuously feeding into our database. And the real-time stream-based processing visualization also need help from the computer science, GI science, and even the CAR-C center support. So the broad impacts of this research, including the following four. So first, through this study, through social sensing, we can improve the understanding of the pattern and the cause of the sleep disturbance that has been experienced by a lot of population in the United States. And we can also explore the disparities in sleep disturbance in vulnerable population, as I mentioned in the first slide, and also the underrepresented populations. And this could be served as evidence for further intervention to reduce this kind of disparity. Also, by monitoring the recovery process, we can provide evidence for policymakers to adjust their regulations. And finally, by detecting those large local major events, can help people understand their local community better, and also to help resource allocation in some disaster response or something like that. So currently, the potential team includes me from geography department, which focus on GI science research, and Dr. Sean Luan from computer science can also help with the computer science part. And Dr. Peng from School of Public Administration and Dr. Zheng from School of Medicine are also on this team. Some other expertise may needed in this research are including like research data services, statistics department, and also maybe the support from the CAR-C. And of course, if anyone interested in this research, feel free to join the discussion, join the team. And here is my like a plan for this research. So I will try to conduct a pilot study using the nighttime tweets in New Mexico during a 3-month period. So this pilot study will investigate the sleep disturbance pattern, the cause of the pattern, and also the state recovery status based on association with the tweet's contents, the emotions. And we'll try to brief the results to team members bi-weekly by email and hold a monthly meeting to discuss and further the results and further analysis. And I have identified some potential funding sources from NSF and NIH that can potentially fit this research. And so this is the reference for this presentation, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Shi. So we have time for just maybe 1 or 2 questions. If you have any, please put them in the chat. And those can be from anyone, judges or participants. Sometimes it takes people a second to type. So we have a question from Rob Del Campo. Is the methodology you are using something that is unique and patentable / marketable?
So the methodology is not patentable because some of the research has been done already in my previous research. The method, so it doesn't. it has been applied a lot in our discipline for the social sensing. So, but we just need to pick carefully what kind of, for example, what kind of statistic analysis in the Go2, or what kind of visualization method we need to do in the Go1 or Go3, something like that. Hope that answers your question.
I have just time for just one more. This is from Bill Stanley. Do you have concerns about external validity of drawing inferences from Twitter to a broader population? People in my demographic don't tweet, though they might be on Facebook.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so first, social media, definitely, there is bias in social media data, but it's a trade-off between the sample size versus sample bias, because typically this kind of research will conduct a survey or questionnaire to a limited sample size of people, but that will also include bias in it. But for social media data, big data, you can get large sample size in really real time. So that can actually reflect a bigger population or in the sample. And also for different social media platforms, definitely for my research, I just use Twitter for as a case study, but there can also be also integrate the Twitter, like also the Facebook or even Instagram into the research, but it just takes more efforts for the data integration part. But the entire methodology will still be the same. We just need to integrate them. Hopefully that can answer your question.
Thank you, Shi. And there are more questions in the chat, which Shi, I hope that you will feel free to respond to, but we do have to move on to our next group. So thank you for your presentation, and applause is always deafening on Zoom, but if you can't hear it, it's very loud. And so I'd like to introduce our next team. So we'll get the video queued up for Preserving Indigenous Sign Languages, submitted by Dr. Emma Saunier from the Department of Africana Studies.
Yes, do you know that over 95% of deaf children are born in hearing families? And do you know that up to 75% of these deaf children that are born in hearing families have little or no access to sign language in the first 5 years of their life? My name is Emma Asonye, and I am a sign linguist. My project is called the Indigenous. Why? Because it collects the indigenous sign languages of the world and put them into a digital multimedia. Niger Sign Up is a brand of the indigenous. Sign Up Africa is a brand of the indigenous. We specialize in documenting and developing indigenous sign languages to ensure that indigenous sign languages do not disappear. Right now, we are developing indigenous sign languages across Africa, and we are going to work on indigenous sign languages beyond Africa. And what is the essence of our project? To provide language access for over 95% of deaf children born in hearing families, especially in rural communities, who have little or no access to sign language in the first 5 years of their lives. Do you know what happens to them? Studies have shown that such deaf children may likely grow up as adults with very poor linguistic and cognitive skills, and also poor academic skills. And my project is to document, develop indigenous sign languages, and also develop sign language app that is going to be user-friendly, that will work in mobile devices, and also to create a web-based pedagogy for indigenous sign languages of the world, first of its kind. And this is coming in an era when the United Nations is advocating for the promotion and development of indigenous languages, languages that are endangered. So I am asking you to support my project. Help us achieve this project. Help us realize this project. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
All right, and so we will now hear from Dr. Emma Saunier on his plan going forward. There you are. All right, camera's working.
Can you allow me to share my screen?
Should be able to now. I made you a co-host.
Is this saying disabled?
Let's try again.
I notice he's logged in twice as two people. Maybe that's also the reason for the reverb.
Okay, I can now. All right, hold on. Okay. Okay, good day, everyone. I am Ima Asonye, and I'm presenting this morning with Ezine Ima Asonye, who is not here because she is in the classroom. And permit me to mention that my team of collaborators from across different countries are here. So I see Mary Edward from Canada, Nakasela from Zambia, Simi from the UK. I see Hyginus and Susie here in the United States, and Onye and the rest from Nigeria. So all of these are not in the University of New Mexico, but they are working with me on this project. So my project is preserving the indigenous sign languages, and I want to share with you what our project does. I will go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to come back to this slide after. Okay, going by the global data, we are working on an existing study that shows that over 95% of deaf children across the world are born to hearing families and hearing parents. And these parents do not know how to sign. And over the past 6 years that we've been working in Africa, collecting indigenous sign languages and also deaf demographic data, we have found out that about 75% of the deaf children across different communities, they grow up with little or no access to sign language of any kind in the first 5 years of their lives. And this is a problem that we want to solve. And in addition to that, we also have found out that several indigenous sign languages across the world are marginalized and endangered. For those who are familiar with languages and especially sign languages, we share the knowledge that sign languages have the likelihood of being endangered than spoken languages. And in fact, sign languages are as well being marginalized by spoken languages. So our project has a multidisciplinary approach which incorporates linguists. So linguists share the ideology that children are born with what is called an innate ability to acquire language. And this is like I explain it in one of my teachings as the linguistic blank slate. It is blank, and when a child is born, it is waiting to be filled up, and it is only filled up with language. And the auditory system plays a very huge function in this filling up of the linguistic blank slate. And this leads to the ideology that's the school of thought that says that up to 80% of the language we speak, we acquire them in the very first 5 years of our lives. Our project incorporates psychology and neurology. also the interface between language, linguistics, and psychology, whereby you can find that every other or most other behaviors that we acquire in life are propelled by language acquisition. And we know that we learn and acquire behaviors in the very early stage of life. And in fact, psychologists talk about critical child language development, age from birth to 3, and also by extension, age from birth to 5. And then our project has the interface of education and special education, if you may say so. So you talk about emergent or early literacy, which is something that also takes place when a child is exposed early to a language of immediate environment. And all of these play a role in the cognitive development of a child. And also, if you look at history or sociocultural studies, you find out that a people's language is part of their cultural heritage. And so historically, the language of deaf people are more likely to die off or get lost for lack of documentation. So all these disciplines seem to have a share in this work we are doing. And so what is the innovation and potential for discovery? So we seek to document indigenous sign languages across the world, beginning in Africa. We want to create a web-based pedagogy for these indigenous sign languages for use both in the urban and rural areas, especially the rural areas where there are no internet. So we want to make these sign language app available on mobile phones. And we also know that this is patentable and it is also marketable if we go that route. Then we propose to develop a sign language app for indigenous sign language use in rural communities, those that don't have computers. And I want to take you back to my first slide that I skipped before to show you this video that was played, and this is an updated version of it.
Sign Up is a brand of the indigenous. Sign Up Africa is a brand of the indigenous. We specialize in documenting and developing indigenous sign languages to ensure that indigenous sign languages do not disappear. Right now, we are developing indigenous sign languages across Africa, and we are going to work on indigenous sign languages beyond Africa. And what is the essence of our project? To provide language access for over 95% of deaf children born in hearing families, especially in rural communities, who have little or no access to sign language in the first 5 years of their lives. Do you know what happens to them? Studies have shown that such deaf children may likely grow up as adults with very poor linguistic and cognitive skills, and also poor academic skills. And my project is to document, develop indigenous sign languages, and also develop sign language app that is going to be user-friendly, that will work in mobile devices, and also to create a web-based pedagogy for indigenous sign languages of the world, first of its kind. And this is coming in an era when the United Nations is advocating for the promotion and development of indigenous languages, languages that are endangered. So I am asking you to support my project. Help us achieve this project. Help us realize this project. Thank you.
All right, so I didn't remember to tell you to focus your attention on the signer, but I know that you may have done that. And so why did I play this video again? Is to show you in real time what we are doing. The sign language variety that you saw there is an indigenous sign language. And how come we are collecting this? Because the deaf signers are being trained to know how to collect their indigenous signing system, because these are the signing systems that they grow up with, but they grow up in these communities where they are told that these languages are not languages, but they are just gestures. And there is a notion out there that indigenous sign languages cannot stand some scientific and technological discourse and all that. So you can imagine that he was able to sign my speech. And I have collected this video in at least 3 major indigenous sign languages in Nigeria today. This particular video alone is going to be collected across different indigenous sign languages. And that is what we're doing. So what is the present and societal significance of our project? When we are able to get this project done, deaf children born into hearing families will have early access to the sign language of their immediate environment. Every study has supported that the language of immediate environment is vital in the life of every child. If you have a deaf child and you do not sign, you can relate with the need that we are trying to solve. Also, they will develop linguistic and cognitive skills that are lacking in many deaf children that we have studied today. They will have equal life opportunity alongside their hearing peers. And they will also improve communication with their families and their communities. Indigenous sign languages, of course, will be documented and preserved across the board. What are the funding targets that we are either working on now or also targeting? Currently, I've been taking a training with my wife on the UNM ICOR cohort. It's ongoing. We are rounding off. There are funding opportunities. There are also opportunities that the training have provided for us that we all are pursuing to make sure that we find support for our project. Also, the NSF NEH documentation, documenting endangered languages, is an annual call that we are also following up. The Endangered Languages Language Documentation Project, ELDP, is also an opportunity. Currently, I'm looking at the USAID that is going to be submitted in September. I did one application with Jacobs Foundation, and I hope to do that again very, very soon. So these are potential funding opportunities that we're looking at. We've been able to do some publications from our project. One of them is very popular right now, Deaf in Nigeria, a preliminary study of isolated deaf communities. And we've been working on a whole lot of others that are coming very, very soon. And most importantly, this year, January, we hosted the first conference of indigenous spoken and sign languages of Africa that is tagged Indigenous Hands and Voices of African Identity. The conference is believed to going to be annual, and so we hope to continue to develop ideas across the disciplines amongst scholars who are working on sign languages and spoken languages in Africa and also beyond. So the previous research, as when we started, was focused on sign language documentation. We started documenting from 2016, especially the sign language variety we call the school sign language, because in the communities that we started documenting, the sign language variety they use in school is different from the ones that are developing from the communities. We started doing video library development like the one you saw. And this also led us into advocacy, serious advocacy in line with the United Nations advocacy for the preservation and development of indigenous languages. And so our advocacy is going on right now, and we are working directly with the deaf communities. So currently we are now looking at the question that says, can innovative technology-based approach enable improved communication between the deaf and their families or communities? And this question, we want to answer it by developing the sign language app and let them be distributed into the communities in the hands of deaf children, in the hands of their families. And over the time, we will continue to study the impact of the use of these sign language apps. And so we are seeking to work with computer scientists and engineers. We are really open, to ask anybody who can help us in that aspect, both from the university here and elsewhere, to come on board because we need your services. So over time, when these apps are developed, we're not going to conduct usability studies for sign up using universal design for learning. So this is what we hope to do, if possible, for the rest of our lives. So these are some of our collaborators: Nigerian National Association of the Deaf, the Schools for the Deaf, and we hope to collaborate with National Association of the Deaf across different countries. And that's why we have someone from Zambia today, because we've made contact in Zambia and we're currently making contact in Gabon. Now in the United States, in New Mexico, how does our project benefit a person, a deaf child who is here? It is going to benefit them in the way that even though ASL is developed and is spread across communities, the indigenous sign languages that were older before ASL was developed could be found in the communities, and these cultural and linguistic heritages can also be preserved, as we all, especially most of us here that are working in cultural heritages. This is an aspect one can also focus upon, and there's a whole lot of study potentials in this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ima. We have time for one or two questions. There's already one in the chat, so we'll just jump right into it. This question, Ima, could you say more about the target population / projected sample, particularly the demographic?
So currently, Nigeria, where we started, we have defined or described that the deaf community in Nigeria as a major minority group because of the population, which we are still collecting the data to be able to determine what the population is. But it is very obvious that we know that the deaf population in Nigeria is so huge. We're talking about in millions, and this is because deafness is caused by some preventable, illness and ailments, which of course seems to trail across people who are low income, and because they are either unable to go to hospital or they are uninformed, or even if they are informed, they are kind of not educated to take some information to prevent the issues that cause deafness in the children. So this brings up what we might think as prevalence of deafness. And so this is also across different African communities. So we believe that the population, if we go by that, it is huge. If we also go by what we found in the deaf schools, for instance, in Lagos, in Nigeria, there are 41 deaf schools that we've documented, and each of these 41 deaf schools has an average of 100 students. So you can calculate what that means. 41 deaf schools, an average of 100 students, and all these, many of them, 95% of them are born in hearing families.
Wonderful, thank you. And I hope, Ima, there may be more questions in the chat, and so please keep an eye on that and respond to those if you can. We're gonna, just for everyone, we don't want anyone to miss any of the presentations, so we're gonna jump into the next one. And so we are going to just bring up the video. Our next group is Creative Action for Housing Solutions, submitted by Dr. Michael Pride from the School of Architecture and Planning.
Creative Action for Housing Solutions envisions an interdisciplinary team using data, community-based participatory research, creative placemaking, and storytelling to better understand and center the experiences of people living with housing insecurity. This project will uncover the complexity of experiences using an intersectional lens to reveal pressing inequities in New Mexico.
Our goal is to correct misconceptions associated with poverty and homelessness and raise the profile and agency of these communities through a multimedia, place-based, and perception-altering campaign for action, bringing human experience to life through storytelling.
Community-based participatory research brings data to life in partnership with real lives. Community gatherings, interviews, videography, and qualitative data will catalyze conversations and build relationships that foster understanding and compassion.
Creative placemaking fosters positive interactions between people from different backgrounds and experiences through art and design. Storytelling influences and alters the way we see the world, revealing opportunities for innovative, community-driven solutions and new models to achieve better outcomes.
Story maps and social media will present a highly visible and dynamic campaign. This project weaves together art, social science, data, and advocacy into a creative tapestry that uplifts communities and presents lived experiences in ways that are powerful and compelling, and thereby generates empathy.
We will expose inequities, build relationships, and tell stories.
We will build capacity for community-driven solutions that broaden awareness.
We will propel action for social justice.
We will build support for equitable and effective policies that address housing insecurity and impart dignity.
Greetings.
All right, and so with that, I'd like to present Dr. Michael Pride, who will present their team's plan.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV, but I'm lucky to be a professor in the architecture department. And I think from the gate, what I want to say is, well, thank you for sure. And wait, I'm going to set up my slides here. And to note, especially that while my name might be at the top or somewhere attached to this proposal, it is really a collective and collaborative proposal that comes out of a collective that we've been that's been working for a number of years across UNM called the Hive for Health, Inclusion, Vibrancy, and Equity. And this network of faculty, staff, and students have been meeting together, working together, collaborating, and learning together around the main issue of social determinants of health. And for those of you who know about social determinants, and those of you who don't, these are the contextual factors that together really contribute more to health outcomes than individual behaviors or our genetic profile. And so these are, and we see housing, of course, is one of those key social determinants. And that's why we have zeroed in and focused on housing for the last few years, and no more pressing time than to address the issues of housing insecurity and homelessness than now, during and after we get to the other side of this pandemic. So this project leads with a campaign that is really about changing perception. Homelessness is a persistent challenge for individuals, for families, and to our collective and individual health and well-being. The Gates Foundation and others have identified perceptions of poverty and homelessness as being a significant barrier in passing assertive policy and programs to effectively reduce housing insecurity and homelessness. And as a matter of fact, while most states in the US prior to the pandemic had actually seen reductions of homelessness as measured by the point in time count, New Mexico is one of just a couple of states where the rate of homelessness actually increased. So we think it's especially important in New Mexico, especially important now. And we will bring this issue of the data, which has been not successful in bringing effective results, to life with storytelling by bringing human experience, individual and collective stories through the kind of effective and compelling methods of art, to bring this to life and actually change perceptions. So that's our near-term aim, is to change those perceptions, and the longer-term goals to provide dignity for vulnerable households, communities, and individuals, and to lead to policies and action to protect, preserve, and produce housing that's accessible and affordable to all. This is the team that gathered in our breakout. You see that most of us are already connected through the Hive initiative and the Hive network at UNM. And Erin Moore, who's a new graduate student in community and regional planning, found us and joined us today and brought so much more life to this proposal. And I want to thank everyone, plus all of the background of the Hive who have been working on this for so much time. Just a recap from the slides, the main themes and methods and approaches that, that are part of this project are this using an intersectional lens. It's comes from social science and data to really understand the little pockets of different experiences among those experiencing, in this case, housing insecurity. Community-based participatory research really engages and works in partnership in mutual, to develop mutual understanding and shared ownership in both the research and the outcomes. Creative placemaking is where kind of arts and action come together in creative ways to really, in this image, literally set a table for collaboration, for understanding, for sharing both food, stories, and understanding. And this is just another image of both how creative placemaking is operating both worldwide in New Mexico and at UNM as a vehicle and venue for bringing people together. This is the Jamboard that we populated during our session. And so you can see so many ideas, so many kinds of partnerships that can be developed. The last panel, I guess I removed, covered up the title is, what does success look like? And so we want to lead with that in this proposal. So we determined our goal is by 2025 to create a new level 1 center at UNM for housing research and action. This would be modeled after some of our existing centers like the Tree Center that integrate multiple disciplines plus public agencies and community organizations. We also imagine 3 years of really focused initiatives at UNM launched through our various centers that exist, through our conferences like the Shared Knowledge Conference or the Undergraduate Research Conference, and through our media outlets and media spaces like the Daily Lobo, and that we would help develop and bring to action local and state policies like housing first and housing as a right. And, you know, one of our favorites, public toilets and hygiene and safe hygiene are available in urban centers and beyond. So what is our potential for extradisciplinary engagement? Wow, it's almost limitless. We had a long list on our Jamboard, but specifically, you know, or more specifically, this project overlaps with 2 of our grand challenges at UNM, specifically the substance use disorders and successful aging. And I hope it's no stretch of the imagination. I don't think I have to go into any more detail about that. Certainly our creative enterprises and disciplines, from journalism and communication to the visual arts, to our new center in arts and environment, and of course, the community and regional planning, architecture and landscape architecture, our branch campuses, our community colleges, growing and building partnerships with the K through 12 schools, community organizations, state and local agencies, and probably most immediately and critical to this proposal Our UNM faculty, staff, and students that we see all bring unique expertise and experiences and perspectives to this kind of work. So what are the potential broader impacts? Well, I'll repeat it again: public policy that is actually effective and leads to real, palpable, tangible, measurable change. Changing public perceptions and learning how to measure that and track it over time. Building new partnerships for actually effective action, not just research, not just studying, not just telling more about the problem, but actually changing the conditions for so many vulnerable communities. Building lasting relationships by bringing together people experiencing housing insecurity, people experiencing homelessness or who are unhoused, their pets. So many have pets. And those lasting relationships effectively bringing policy and action to life. Advancing scholarship on housing security and homelessness. We've not yet hit this yet, so we've not yet found the magic bullet. We think we need to just keep working on it. And at the bottom line, really reducing homelessness and reducing housing insecurity, particularly in New Mexico. The potential for extramural funding we think is pretty broad. These national and local foundations recognize the connections between housing insecurity and community health and well-being, and they've supported initiatives to address these challenges as priorities in their funding profiles. The intellectual merit, just rounding back again, learning more about the conditions of housing insecurity in New Mexico that seems so intractable, and learn how to create and implement campaigns for better empathy and to develop and impact public policy to bring about change. We thank you all for this 10 minutes segment and for your consideration of this proposal.
Thank you so much, Michael. We have time for just one quick question, and we could, if people want to hang around, we can certainly have more questions. But I have to send the judges out to council in a minute here. So let's see, Michael, could you say more about the urgency of this work in New Mexico? What are the stats, for example?
Okay, I wish I should have that number for you about how the homelessness on the count in time changed over the last 5 years, reducing in most states, but actually increasing in New Mexico. And that one slide that we showed was just part of a project. Many of you may know that. Let's see if I can go ahead and bring you this one. The census has been, whoops, I don't even know what I'm sharing, do I? Let me stop sharing. Let me try again. Sorry, I know our time is limited. The US Census has been surveying the population during this pandemic to get a sense for where some of the particular problems or issues that would project into the future. So this was in 2020 during the pandemic, and we see New Mexico among the highest percentage of adults facing housing insecurity during the pandemic. Add to this the fact that our housing market has really heated up in the last year, especially because of the pandemic. I think people perceive New Mexico as maybe a safe place to be, and maybe even a joyful and affirming place to be, when other places have been struggling on so many fronts, and yet we have such a high level of poverty. And so this heated up market raises the prices of housing, and that puts pressure on a supply that already does not meet the need. And so even higher income households are being driven out of housing and really are at risk for whenever the federal supports end, which has created a moratorium on evictions. These people will start to be evicted. So we need to address this challenge, not tomorrow, not next week, but yesterday and definitely today. And we're ready to get going on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There are some great questions in the chat, but I also know that people need to get to other places. And so I just want to wrap up by saying thank you so much to our teams for your time and energy, and for all of you in coming and engaging with those teams. We're going to have the winner will be announced at the award ceremony at 2:30 this afternoon. I hope that you can all join us for that session. We'll also be announcing the student competition award winners at that time. There's also other sessions today, including our keynote by our new VPR, Ellen Fisher, at 2 o'clock today. So if you have the time, please join us. And teams, we will be seeing you at 2:30.